I'm very pleased to introduce the first demo today, which will be titled Unboxing the Witt, AI versus 500 Years of British Art. And I'm delighted to say we have Simon Randal here, who is the CEO of PIMLOC, which is a tech startup that uses AI to maintain classification and privacy of images and assist in research. And also Tom Bilson, the head of digital media at the Courtauld Institute of Art. I hear that these two have been working together, so I'm excited to have them unbox the Witt for us. Okay, please join me in welcoming them.
Okay, I'll ask a provocative question. Who's heard of the Witt Library? Oh, brilliant, thank you. Well, I should say, for those of you who haven't, the Witt Library is a large and famous, or perhaps up until the internet arrived, it was famous, collection of photographs, drawings and cuttings. I'm just going to run through some stats. The subject matter is paintings, drawings, prints of Western art, and the period covered is 1200 until 2008, when the library stopped receiving new material. It's believed to be the second or perhaps third largest collection of its type in the world. The ones that might be larger are the National Gallery of Art in Washington and the RKD in the Netherlands, but they have suspiciously rounded numbers as to how many images that they contain. So it's just under 2.2 million images. 70,000 artists are included across 26 national schools, and in terms of the boxes, if you put them end to end, there's 6.8 kilometers of boxes. The library was founded in the 1890s by a man called Sir Robert Witt, who was a friend of Samuel Courtauld's, and this is the library as it stood in his house up until 1952. And at the point that it left and came to the Courtauld, it had already grown to 400,000 images. And his wife, his future wife, also collected photographs of works of art, so that was a rare match between them when they got married. The structure of a Witt box, every single box in the Witt is structured in the same way. First of all, the library is grouped into countries. So when you enter, you're in Britain, you move into France, then you move into Germany, Russia, Switzerland, etc. Within each country, artists are listed alphabetically, and then by box, and then within the boxes there are particular styles or subjects of painting. And the boxes also contain folders which group the material still more within a box. Sometimes the kind of cataloguing that the Witt contains is perhaps a little bit too much. And it's very, very detailed. And sometimes it follows a logic all of its own. In 2017, the Courtauld was very generously awarded funding by a private benefactor to digitize a part of the library as a kind of pilot project for getting the Witt online. We had enough funding to do around about 260,000 images. So although this is expressed as a pilot project, it's in fact a massive project. And we worked out that this represents roughly about 50% of the British school, which contains just over 500,000. And we had to come up with a way of dividing the British school in half, rather than just go from A to M, or something rather foolish like that. We decided to rank the artists in order of date of birth. So we've digitized British art from 1200 to 1799. So it includes all the major names that are in the Witt that many of the people who come to the library actually use. The digitization was done over 4 months by a Dutch contractor called Picture-Eye, and you can see the library leaving in a lorry here, or a small part of it. Here it is shrink-wrapped in their studio in Holland, and here you can see it actually being digitized. The images are online, they're not yet available to the public. We're still working through some permissions that reside within the material that we placed online, although none of the works themselves are in copyright. There's often a photographer's permission, or sometimes there's a publisher's permission that we need to clear. I'll tell you a little bit about how we present the images online. We're very pragmatic in the way that we present these images. In terms of our cataloguing, we're only cataloguing down to the box and the folder. So this gives us a project that we can do in 4 years. If we actually went down to every individual image, it would probably lengthen the project to around about 80 years. And so we clearly can't do that. So when you look at the collection online, you're really seeing it in the same way that it's actually depicted in the library. And we don't scan things, we photograph them. And we photograph everything with a little bit of raking light, so that when you see these images on the table, on the screen, it's just like looking at them on a table. You can see a little bit of shadow. You can see that the image of a photograph that you're looking at has been adhered to a piece of cardboard. We crop outside the mount, and you can see this in a second. And we also photograph anything on the back, even if it's an inscrutable dot or just a little cross on the back, because we don't want to cut off any kind of future lines of inquiry as a consequence of digitizing really being a kind of way of cleaning up a collection. But obviously this cataloguing is very pragmatic, what you see online, and I should just show you the library in a second. There we go. Let's see. This is how we presented it in terms of this actual demo. So if you look under C, you'll see a list of artist names. If we choose somebody here, you'll see the images as we're presenting them. So this represents the contents of a box in the Witt, or perhaps the contents of a folder. And as you would expect, everything can be displayed on the screen and also zoomed in at super high resolution. But there's just one more thing. I've always wanted to say that, and for that, I'll hand over to Simon.
Thank you, Tom. Plug that in. Thank you. Yeah, so I had a very opportune meeting with Tom. So we're a resident in the building as well. I run a small content intelligence business, so an AI business. We specialize in helping businesses understand the content that's in their image and video collections, whether that's coming from a broadcast video stream or a very large archive collections of images. And myself and Tom got talking in one of the cafes, and he was telling me about the digitization project, and he relayed some of the stories that you saw with the metadata on the boxes. I've now got 300,000 images of art, from 1200 to 1700. Some of the boxes have some metadata, some have none. And actually, the way that the digital collection works at the moment, it's very much like it worked when it was in the, or it still is in the cellars downstairs here. You go in there, you need to navigate room by country. If you understand an artist or a date, you can access the collection that way. But if you don't understand artist, if you don't understand date, there's actually no way of searching this collection of 300,000 images. So for the 25 people in the UK that understand how to go in there and use the library downstairs, that's fantastic. But for everybody else on the planet, how do I get access to a collection that's effectively impenetrable? Do I come to the Courtauld and get a PhD and understand how to do it? Or do I need some other tools to be able to go in there and actually have fun, discover, and find things I'm looking for? So the technology we build is we build a range of algorithms that become very good at understanding the different abstract features within an image. So down to the pixel level, groups of pixels, or the whole image. And unlike other providers, what we don't do is we don't provide hard classifications and then hard tag all those images. So we don't say, this one's a cat, and this one's a dog, and this one's a banana. We just keep all those abstract features in memory. And then when the user comes in and starts to search for something, we then use all the information we've got to provide them with the best set of results that we can based on what it is they're specifically looking for. So as you know, one of the big issues with adding metadata to a collection is, how do I know which bits of metadata are useful for somebody in the future to go and look for? And the way that language changes over time, it means that over time you end up with a collection that becomes harder and harder and more constrained to search. So you can do things which are fairly obvious. So I can come into the collection of 300,000 images, and I can look for a cat. If you want to look for images of cats, that's fine. And we find lots of different cats. I can find images of lions. I can find images of skeletons. And what we're doing here is we're not saying here is every single image of a skeleton. What we're saying is, here's lots of images that look like skeletons. So if you think about the exploration of trying to find different bits of art, the system isn't infallible. So if you look for a skeleton, 100% of them aren't going to be skeletons, but actually it turns out that this guy's suit looks quite skeleton-like. And it may be that on your journey to try and find a suitable image, that things that look similar to the item that you're looking for is actually a valuable thing. For the curators in the collections, what they can do, if skeleton was a really important term that people wanted to search for, and as the Courtauld, you wanted to make sure that every time somebody searched for that, they only ever got skeletons, then a curator can come in here and actually add some intelligence back into the system and provide it with some, saying, you know, which of these, that's not actually a skeleton, and neither's that, and then the system then learns. So if you think about having thousands of people using your collection over time, and then being able to use their insight and brain power and also knowledge to improve the way the system works, you know, 10 years forward, you've got a system that understands and recognizes a much broader set of terms. We've also trained the system to recognize styles of art. So again, I'm not saying that all these images that are about to appear are Turners, because actually there's no metadata in the collection, and we haven't had an expert go through and do them. What we're saying is these images look like the style of a Turner painting. And again, for a curator that wants to come and actually annotate that data set, that speeds their job up much faster. So they can then take a subset of the image collection, go through that and say, actually, these are, these aren't. And if you want to, you could then go and tag the collection properly. The other fun thing you can do, actually, I'll run one for Constable as well, just so you can see. Obviously, we've only got collections from 1200 to 1700. When we've got some collections where they're a lot more modern, actually, you can run a lot more interesting and kind of fun searches for different types of art history. The other thing you can come in here and do is I could search for images of fruit, and as part of the results, we're actually, where are we? You can actually then also isolate different elements of the image. So if you think that text-based search can be a very constraining way of searching most image collections, but actually specifically for art, it's very constraining because you need to think of the language you have to use. It has to translate directly to content within an image, and you also have to know the thing exists. Whereas actually, if we could present you with a range of images to start with, and you just use the faces, the content, the objects within those images to navigate, it becomes a much freer and more interesting way of navigating your way around collections. So for example, I can come in here, and you know, we can start to click on people's faces and find for people that have got faces similar to those people, and the system then generates new classifiers on the fly and provides you with results. So again, much freer tools for what I would call discovery rather than specifically search. The other fun thing you can do is actually you can search the collection with your own image. So if I come in here and I search, so I have an image here of Hogarth that I think Tom took. It was a copy from somewhere or other.
Yeah.
If I upload that image, and I'll show you the image I've uploaded, it's this one here. You can then see we instantly get back all the images in the collection that look similar to this one. So actually there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There's about 15 versions of that image appear in the Courtauld collection that they've captured over time in different places and different positions. And actually it's a very easy way of getting all those prints back again. The other fun thing we can do, so very early on when I was testing this system, there was two things actually. My 5-year-old daughter was very excited at the fact that she could now navigate an art collection by actually just tapping on images, something that there's no way she could have done before in the old world. And then the second thing is when I allowed her to upload a photo of herself and use that to find similar looking people in the collection, she suddenly got very excited. So an ability to come in here and search a collection by an image, and just to prove the point, rather than go around and take someone's photo, as we usually do, I've got a photo here of Mark Zuckerberg. You want to know what he looks like? So I upload a picture of him. I'll show you the photo I've uploaded. It's this one. And then as you can see, it turns out he's related to quite a few people in the Courtauld collection. So again, it's a bit of a fun example, but the point that a 5-year-old can suddenly take a picture of the art they've painted in school or an image of themselves and use that as a starting point to start searching a collection, which then is a good jump-off point to finding other things or to go and discovering more, again gives you a very different view on what historically was, we need to spend lots of money to tag this collection so that people can look for bananas. I think that's a good enough demo, isn't it? I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to show you in there. Anything else you want to search for? Shout. We give it a go. The other thing is, so what we've done is we've trained the system to recognize 20,000 different objects, just to speed the process up. If you search for something the system's never seen before, It goes online, it runs a search, it downloads about 200 images from a range of sources. We build a classifier on the fly, and then we try and return whatever images are closest to that thing. So you can search for anything. The more abstract you get, the stranger some of the one of the big things is when you're searching collections is you don't want to be disappointed when you look for banana and it says we don't have any in the collection, and then you search for fruit and suddenly there's millions of them. So we took the view that it's better to show things that are similar but not correct than show nothing. Anyone want to shout out a search term? Or maybe you can have a play later. Blue, yes, actually that's good. See what that does. They're all black and white mostly. Or grayscale, so it's now going away and downloading images of what blue is. It's going to start classifying blue, and then it will come back with some results. Actually, I'll show you some searches I've done for shapes which work really well. So if you search for circles, triangles, squares, you get a really interesting output in terms of the art that it picks up. Apologies for the slowness, this is going out on my smartphone, so that might be why so it's downloaded the images, it's now building the new classifier, so it's running our algorithm over those 200 images of blue to try and work out what the hell blue is at a pixel and larger level, and it's failed. Brilliant. I think that's just down to the internet connection, unfortunately. I'll try it once more. If it fails again, I'll say sorry.
Can I just ask while we're waiting?
Yeah, of course.
I mean, I can kind of imagine how long it would take to photograph 200 or 1,000 images, but what scale of undertaking is it to apply your kind of methodology to that's been digitised?
Very simple. So where we spend a lot of time is training the algorithms to start with. But once they're trained, they run on very small devices. So actually, I'm doing this whole demo off this very small box here, which is effectively a bit of memory, which has got the 300,000 images on, and a small GPU. And we index 300,000 images in about half a day, using effectively that technology. We've got customers where we receive 2 to 3 million images a week, and we're indexing those on a daily basis. So if you've got enough processing power, running our algorithms over the collections is very quick and easy. The challenge comes in building the algorithms to start with, if that makes sense. Yeah. So that's it. So doing this to very large collections is not a bottleneck.
And what we've done at the moment is that these will be presented online without this kind of search technology. We've just tried this assignment to see, really as a proof of concept, to see whether it works. But on a future version of the website, you'll be able to do normal text or country or genre or artist-based searching, but also perhaps combine it with this to narrow down your search still further, because we're very aware that we haven't actually catalogued every image within the collection. So this is a way of kind of backfilling that lack of very specific cataloguing, although of course what we've done is present information that's no worse than if you come to the library yourself as a user.
No, I understand, it's just that you have to imagine what kind of research queries somebody might have, whereas you don't have to do that really, do you?
I mean, that's the beauty. That's
what I mean.
Yeah.
It really transforms it.
Yeah, I mean, we've been running this business for 18 months, but we've been building the platform for about 5 years. Early on in the process, when we started to talk to some art and heritage institutions, it became very clear that some people were wedded to their taxonomy and tagging system, and the last thing they wanted to do was open that up to anybody, because they'd spent 15 years building that, and there was a lot of expertise around it. And actually, over time, we've now found that most people are being a lot more open to allowing them a lot freer tools to go manage a collection. We have a few institutions where they still hold the prestige of the quality of their tags at heart, and therefore they worry about giving people results to a turner that may not be a turner, because they think that reflects badly on their brand and their prestige. But actually, for those guys, we built a two-tier system where we allow their users to search for anything based on the AI, but we only allow their expert curators to be able to add hard tags back into the system. So you can, as a 5-year-old or an uninformed art person, you can search for anything, but it's actually only one of the 200 people that they've kind of certified that can go in and add a hard tag. And then when the results come back, we're being quite specific about which ones are which. I think that would potentially change over time. And other collections where we do have metadata, the ability to say artist, date, and a horse, or artist, date, and the painting of the river with whatever in it, suddenly does become a lot more powerful to find a specific painting that you're looking for.
And just as one last point, there's a very powerful project I think that this kind of suggests that we should do, and that we intend to do one day, which is to actually use silent software to tag the whole of the Witt library. So each image will perhaps get 10 or 15 tags that relate to man, the woman, the horse, sky, fruit, whatever. And then have you seen the Google Ngram, which is a way of searching the text of, I think, 25 million books. And it searches the text of these books in phrases, and you can see it on a graph over time. So you can see the rise and fall of particular keywords. Well, if we could apply that to the whole of the Witt library, we're going to start being able to ask art a question that's never really been able to be asked before, which is so that you can see the incidences of works depicting laughing or kissing or smiling or running, and see that fall and rise over a particular time. And so perhaps the library is able to tell us things that we've never been able to ask before, and I think that's a really, really exciting development.
Slide up and down the algorithm. So I was really struck by the possibility of finding, errors or coincidence, depends how you want to call it. And then if you indeed have users improving results or something, will you lose that quality? So I'm thinking if an artist is trying to search, for instance, they would maybe prefer the errors, and maybe even some type of researchers would prefer finding those weird correlations.
Yes, I mean the answer is
yes. So is it possible to choose yourself what kind of methodology?
So where to set the threshold, basically.
Yes.
So at the moment we don't set any thresholds. Mm-hmm. So if I just keep scrolling through this page of circles, I could go infinitely. So I could go all the way down to 300,000 images. So every time you run a result, we're actually returning the whole collection, just in a ranked order. What we decided not to do, what a lot of systems will do, is they will apply a threshold to most terms, so that we'll only show you the top terms so that we can be confident that they're more accurate. So what we're actually doing is, so I've just searched for circles. I can come in here and improve this search, so I can remove the pig, even though it is in a circle. Maybe it's not really what I was looking for. And then what I'm effectively doing is reordering and re-ranking those 300,000 images on the fly. So you just have to keep going down, yeah. I mean, what I could do is I could come in here and say, what I'm really interested in is things that look similar to this painting, and run a search. Or I'm interested in things that look similar to this painting. So within the image view, you've also got an ability to click on content in an image, find things similar to the image, and also upload images. So there's quite a lot of, if you've got a fuzzier project to find something that you don't know exactly what it is, there's a much freer way of coming in here. We've also built a discovery tool where we cluster everything in three-dimensional space and allow you to very quickly flick through different clusters, which we call it's kind of like a guided drunken walk through space, we call it, because we put some intelligence in there, but actually there's also still a lot of spontaneity. Because from what we found, it's the things you aren't looking for that are the ones that usually delight everybody, not the things you are looking for. Because the thing you are looking for, you tend to know it exists, and therefore it's a bit of a chore, whereas the stuff you stumble upon is a lot more enjoyable.
That was really fascinating. In the previous panel, one of the speakers, Amy Jeff, said that she didn't really think there were that many new questions around, that it was possible to answer standing questions, if you like, in kind of novel ways. And as you were talking, I was thinking about the ability to kind of study the metadata almost, the queries that people are asking. Because it may be that maybe we as an art history collective aren't that good at answering, posing profoundly new questions. But as we open up this massive archive of images to a wider public, I think we might be surprised by the kinds of things that people are looking for and where their curiosity takes them. And so I just wonder if it's going to be possible in the era of GDPR and all that kind of stuff to kind of do a meta study of the metadata, because I think maybe that's where the new questions are.
I mean, I know from looking at stats of people who search our website already that people do search for rather peculiar things on the architecture website.
I'm not going to ask you what rather peculiar is.
Naked elves.
Elves? Oh, that's so sweet. My mind.
I'm not typing that in.
No. No, I think when we have put collections online, we haven't really done enough work to actually not only just analyse but visualise this metadata. And I think tools that we have at our disposal to visualize things, to visualize huge amounts of metadata, a bit like the Google Ngram that just shows you a rise and fall in lines that corresponds with millions and millions of books. If you can do that with millions of images. And I think the real challenge is actually visualizing questions and visualizing queries, not just reporting on them, because I think we're past the age of just using spreadsheets and saying 63% and things like that. I think people have to see what this looks like, and I think that's part of our challenge.
Yeah, but I was just going to finish on this. I love this. The system thinks this is an angel. And you're never going to find that with a manual. No one manually tagging this is ever going to think to write angel for a picture of an owl. So.
When will this be made available? That's fascinating.
The collaboration with Simon will have to wait to a new iteration of the website because we didn't have the budget to build this into what was essentially just a proof of concept website. The actual site will launch, we hope, very soon. The main thing is that a lot of the content on the site is owned by auction houses or comes from Sotheby's and Christie's catalogues. Now, whether it's actually their copyright or not is a question that we're still teasing out. And also there are further questions to do with the Witt's original deed of gift of the collection to the Courtauld and the implications that digitization might have for perhaps moving the collection to other locations, sort of restricting access, all of these things. So it's one big question that we're working through, but I think we've changed from the stance of asking people permission to publish to really asking them to just sign up to a common understanding or a memo of understanding that absolves them of any liability in case the information published is no longer correct. It does the same to the Courtauld. It has a very rigorous takedown policy if people find an image should not be online. And so I think once we get to that point, then this will go. But it is online on a site at the moment. You just can't find it.
One very last question.
This was fantastic, thank you. And I can imagine these kinds of searches and accidental juxtapositions can actually generate research questions that you never thought of. I wonder, is there a sort of a small scale, more personal level of this sort of technology to be used by individuals who have thousands of images on their own personal computers and need to be able to find them with greater ease than most of us do nowadays?
Yeah, I mean, there are a few. So Google Photos will provide some of that functionality in the cloud. So if you're happy to put your images on Google servers, I think they've now indexed about 100,000 things. So you can go in there and search for things that they've indexed. If you search for things they haven't, like an angel, you're not going to get any results. Right. And also you need to be happy putting your images up there to start with. So we did come up with a product actually that was a consumer version of this box that you put in your lounge.
That's what we need to know.
It looked a lot prettier. Called Folio, P-H-O-L-I-O. The idea being you could put it in your lounge, you could upload your images, and then effectively you've got all the same tools that we've got here. We thought it was a good idea, so we put it on Kickstarter to see demand, and it turned out that there's not enough demand for us yet to go into manufacturing, but that idea of a solution is still there. So we may bring it as an app, or we may bring it as an add-on to a NAS drive. But yeah, so it kind of works all the way down to a very small box in the lounge, all the way up to a very big server farm for people that are streaming security video and things as well. Would you buy that?
I would.
How much would you need?
Not a huge amount, actually. Let's talk after.
Well, on that note, join me in thanking you. Our second demo will be with Denis Pellerin, who is from the London Stereoscopic company, and I'm very pleased and excited to turn off the PowerPoint and shortly to dim the lights. Okay, please join me in welcoming Denis.
Thank you. Well, I'm from the London Stereoscopic company, Brown Mays, London Stereoscopic company, and everything we do is in 3D, so that's why you've got the glasses. They tend to slip off the nose, so you have to keep your head up, but it's very good for posture anyway, so let's go. So, yeah, this is how I entitled my talk, because until a few weeks ago when a firm kindly invited me to come here, never really thought about how I became an art historian, and it was quite an interesting exercise. And I think it started with this. When we were kids, we had these images in our bedroom, my brothers and I, and this is what started my interest in history. And my father was obviously interested in history and Napoleon, and it's also the fact that these images were made by a picture maker called Pellerin, same name as as mine. He's no relation, but I guess that's what started my father's interest in him and our interest in history. And then it carried on with this. This is a picture Lotto about French history. So you can actually become an historian thanks to games, board games, and this was one Christmas. And this is a very basic things. You've got boards with dates on them, and you've got cards, and you have to somebody takes a card, and you have to put it on the board, and the one with the first full board wins. Now this is very basic, but it gives you a sort of a timeline, an idea of time. And I checked with my brothers, and they all remember that game, which I bought a couple of days ago on the internet because ours was lost. So that's how it started. And stamps. We had a very good collection of art stamps in France, very fine engravings. And this was my first introduction to art, actually, stamps. And some are quite good. I mean, this is Degas. This is the dancer with the bouquet by Degas. And it gives you a very good idea of what the painting looks like. The next step was eating chocolate. My brothers and I ate a lot of chocolate, obviously, because in this brand, Poulain, in France, you could actually find pictures. There were pictures about cats, cars, and at some point, we had pictures about art. So this is one of the vignettes you found in the chocolate bar. You just tore the first paper, and you found a picture inside. So this is Delacroix, Liberty Guiding the People, the Revolution of 1830. And you could actually stick those vignettes in an album, just like the Panini albums nowadays. And this was in the 1960s. So you had lots of pages. You had 24 vignettes here with information about the artist, about the painting itself, where it was. This is all about French painting. But so you get the idea. So you bought the chocolate, you add the chocolate, and you try to get all the pictures so that you could fill up the album. So that was my first introduction to art with the stamps. And of course, the first time I went to the Louvre, I was a bit struck. This is, at the top, this is the size, this is the size of the original vignette, and this is the comparative size of the painting. So I was quite surprised when I first visited the Louvre, because I quite liked my small vignettes, but this is obviously much better. Same with stamps. So this is the original Degas, and this is the size of the stamp. So again, quite a surprise. And then I discovered the stereoscope. So the stereoscope was invented in 1838 by Charles Wheatstone. Well, actually before that, but that's another story. And one day I came across one of those Holmes-based stereoscopes, which were very popular in the beginning of the 20th century. And there were a few cards as well. And well, everything has been lost, unfortunately. But I was so interested that I took photos, and you can see the photos on the side. These are the photos I took of my first encounter with a stereoscope when I was in my late teens. And these stereoscopes makes you look very cool when you look through it. So it was a very popular form at the time. So this is one of the photos I took when I first found this stereoscope, and at the bottom on the right you can see the picture that actually hooked me on stereo. It is the inside of the Tuileries Palace in Paris, and when I put that slide into the stereoscope, for 10 seconds I actually stepped into the picture and I said, oh my God, I am actually inside the Salon de la Paix in the Tuileries, and I know this palace was burnt to the ground in 1871. So it was magical. It lasted a few seconds, and the next day I started buying my first photos, my first stereos. So how can you? This is I never found the photo actually. The first photo that hooked me on stereo. I never found it again, but I found lots of similar ones. And at some point, I was so obsessed with the Tuileries that I could walk from one pavilion to the other, and of course you've got nothing now, but you could actually reconstruct the whole palace. You could actually visit the whole palace in 3D as if it was actually there. And with modern technologies, you could actually, there are so many photos in 3D of the interior of the Tuileries that you could actually reconstruct the whole thing and make people visit it virtually. So, if you are interested in art, and especially in sculpture, you can have a whole gallery in a box, and you can actually discover art with a stereoscope, and sculpture is particularly wonderful in stereos. Well, sculptures are 3D objects, and I've never understood why all sculptures are not photographed in 3D, because this is, well, a very famous example, the Laocoon. I mean, this is so much better. I mean, if you can't afford to go and see the original, it's so much better to see it in 3D than to see it flat. And the Victorians understood that very, very quickly. And when the stereoscope was first introduced at the Great Exhibition in 1851, soon after there were dozens and dozens of images of sculptures. So they started like this. This is a very early photo after Dannecker, Ariadne and the Panther. And they started taking first the front side and then the back side, and they would sell both pictures. But then they soon realized that it was much better to actually take one picture with a mirror, so you would see both sides, because the reflection was also in 3D. So you can actually see hundreds of statues in the stereoscopes out of the millions of stereos that were produced in the Victorian era. So this is another example, again with a mirror. This one is a very famous Greek slave, which was very popular at the Great Exhibition of 1851, which is an American statue, but you can understand why it was very popular. And the other way was to take several pictures of the same statues from different angles. So this is the Reading Girl, which was the most popular statue of the 1862 exhibition this time. So popular that actually the London Stereoscopic company who took this photo bought the statue, and they produced hundreds of thousands of images of the statue in 3D, which they sold. So you can see the statue at the bottom. You can see at the foot of the statue, you can see one of the stereos they took. So they actually bought the statue. Unfortunately, recently, the statue was allowed to be sold to the Americans, and it's now in exile in Washington. Poor girl. Now, this is a modern photo of the Venus of Milo in Paris. Now, it's very difficult to see the Venus of Milo like this nowadays, because what you usually get is this, or this, because most people, when they visit a museum, are not really interested in looking at the statue or the works of art, but more in taking selfies and showing their friends, I was there. I didn't see anything. I didn't appreciate anything, but as you can see, I was there. So the best way to actually appreciate a statue nowadays is through a stereoscope. So this is a photo from the 1900s of the Venus of Milo, and when you look through a stereoscope, well, this is projected, but when you look through a proper stereoscope, you can actually see this. So you can actually go from the bottom of the picture, and you can actually let your eyes travel all the way through the top of the statue, and you can examine every detail. So the stereoscope is a very useful instrument when you want to look at art, especially sculptures. Quite impressive, I think. And no noise, no flashes, no people, so much better, much better experience. From a very, very early stage, photographers took photos of museums. So if you are interested in museography, the stereoscope is also very interesting, because there are hundreds of photos of statues in situ. So this is the Louvre Museum, and this is from a series by Henri Plot, Musée Impérial du Louvre. So you can see 3 labels on the back. So each time there was a label on the back with the name of the statue and usually the name of the sculptor as well when it was known. This is the British Museum. This is by Roger Fenton. So this is another example of how sculptures were exhibited at the time. This is a museum in Leicester, the Leicester Museum. So they had a collection of reproductions of statues. You can recognize the Laocoon at the bottom, the boy with plucking a thorn out of his foot. You've got the Medici Venus as well. So all these statues were in local museums, and you can see how they were actually exhibited, and the bust of Patroclus on the floor on the left of the picture. So this is how the Victorians discovered art when they were not in London, when they couldn't have access to the British Museum or to other collections. We also have photos of private collections in stereo. This is the collection of in Chatsworth, in Derbyshire, of the Duke of Derbyshire there. And so this is how his gallery looked like in the 1860s. This is in Florence at the time, so again in the 1860s, so another collection of statues. And you could also do the same for paintings. This is the collection of the Duke of Morny, who was Napoleon III's half-brother. When he died in 1865, they auctioned his collection, but before that, they took photos of the collection as it was on the wall. So you can actually see how pictures were hanging on the wall in his house in Paris. So very interesting way to travel back in time and see how people appreciated art and how they would hang their pictures on the walls. There are lots of pictures of artists at work because people had some funny notions about artists. So there are lots of pictures of artists painting outside, like here, on top of a mountain. This is in the Alps. He's drawing with his guides on the left. This one is called Artist at Work. It's 1857 in France. And the next one is also called Artist at Work, because that was the idea that artists had a sort of a easy life. Women, easy life, not too much work, long naps in the sun, and that was the idea of the bourgeoisie. The middle class thought that artists had it very easy. There are also pictures of amateur artists. So in the drawing room, this time inside a drawing room, how you can be a portrait painter. This is the artist's boudoir. That's the name of the card, actually, the artist's boudoir. So with a maid here. So Victorian ladies were not taught a lot, but they could draw and paint very well. Here is another one. This is a drawing school. So, and the pupil is drawing a caricature of his teacher, as you can see, and you recognize the Laocoon, the Patroclus as well, the bust of Patroclus, the bust of Shakespeare. So lots of information about art in stereos, and you see them in 3D, of course. This is another representation of an artist's studio. So you must imagine this was done in a studio, in a photographer's studio, so they had to recreate, and they had to be very, very meticulous, because otherwise people would have said, no, this is not true, this is not real, it doesn't look real. So they had to be very, very careful to make it look as real as possible. And if you compare that photo to engravings in magazines, illustrations, you can see that it is very similar to what it was. This is another kind of a studio, a bit more risque, this one. This is another one. So this is from a series called Une Maison à Paris, a house in Paris, and this is the top floor. There are 12 pictures from different floors, and this is how the French bourgeoisie imagined the life of the artist. Women, drink, maybe not much to eat or not much to drink actually, but still a carefree life. Strangely enough, there are lots of photos of women painters, and each time they are bare-breasted. I don't know why, if there is something with artists, women artists at the time, but each time they represented them with bare breasts. Well, this one is very, very, just a very slightly risque, not very much. You can also find this kind of photos of an artist studio with frogs, obviously French, of course. This is by the same guys who did the photo before, the photo of the artist in their studio before. So you have the painter and you have the sculptor. So frogs. So, but again, probably very similar to a real artist studio. Sometimes they told more tragic tales. So this is the suicide of the artist. You can read in the press in France at the time that sometimes artists whose paintings had been rejected from the salon actually committed suicide. So this is an example of this poor guy. His picture, nobody liked his picture and he just killed himself. So it can be tragic sometimes. Lots of other representations of studios. Again, you have to imagine that this is a staged photo, so this is reconstructed in a photographer's studio, and I'll let you imagine how long it must have taken to do that, to make it look normal, natural. So lots of photos of artists at work or entertaining, or being entertained, or just relaxing, having fun. So you've got sculptures and the model, the sculptor and his model here. You've got the artists around the stove. And these pictures are interesting because they actually show paintings and they show sculptures, and this is how I got interested again in art and painting and sculpture. For example, if you take this image here, on the right you can see a painting, or the beginning of a painting, which is actually in the Louvre, which is Esther before Assuerus. So when I looked at the photo, I said, oh, that's strange, maybe I can find what it is, and I did. You know, it took some research, because in those days there were no internet facilities, but anyway. And this one, the main model, in the background you can see another painting, and this one is in the Wallace collection. This is The Fountain of Love by Fragonard. So you can actually learn quite a few things about painting and art in stereos. This one, the guy is pretending to be painting two heads. This one took me a little longer to find. And these are the two heads, and they belong to the two philosophers from Thomas Couture's Les Romains de la Décadence, which is in Orsay, and which is a huge painting about as big as the wall here. If you've seen it, you will remember how huge it is. These are photos from the 1862 exhibition. There was a painting exhibition, which was not actually part of the exhibition, but you can actually again see how pictures were presented and were shown. And you can see that there were some pictures were actually hung on the floor. So you had to bend down to look at the painting. And again, it's an interesting game. So this is another room. This is the second room of the exhibition. It's an interesting game to try and find the painting. So this is Landseer, Prince Albert and Queen Victoria in 1842, a royal collection. This is Princess Victoria and her husband, and the future Emperor William II of Germany, the one who declared the First World War. This one is less known. It's James Clark Hooke, and this is the only picture I found online of this painting. And I checked with the photograph, and if you, well, I think you can see, it's obvious. This is not the real painting. This is the one on ArtNet, the one on the right. So this is the one which was sold, auctioned, and if you look at the original painting on the photograph, you can see it's different. In the modern version, well, the colored version, the figures look much stiffer, and you can see the rope. The ropes are, the ropes are not the same here. So that's interesting. So I haven't had time to dig further, but I think this calls for investigation. Another room here, the other side of the same room actually. So you can find Henry Holiday's Burgess of Calais. You can find Frederick Leighton, Cimabue, and the procession of a painting he made of the Virgin Mary. And this is William Holman Hunt, Cordelia and King Lear. So can you imagine how good it would be if we could take any picture like this and actually find all the information? Because most of these paintings have disappeared now because Victorian art is no longer considered interesting. It's considered a bit kitsch or whatever. And a lot of Victorian paintings have disappeared, but it would be nice with all the nice things we've seen today to be able to visit, to take a photo like this and to have the original paintings come up and in color and with information about the artists and whatever. So that's something that's technically possible nowadays. So let's hope it will happen one day. Strangely enough, the Victorians also reproduced paintings in stereo. So this is a painting by Daniel Maclise, the play scene in Hamlet, and it was made into a stereo. So they reconstructed the painting, they restaged it in 3D, made it a bit smaller, of course, because of the format. This is another one, answering the advertisement. It was made into a stereo, but they went one step further. They isolated one character, the widow, and published a photo, and it was made into a fairing. So fairing, I don't know if you know what fairings are. They are China figures which were sold or won as prizes in fairs. And there are lots of them. And strangely enough, a lot of them are inspired by paintings or cartoons in Punch. This one was inspired by the stereo, which was in turn inspired by Punch cartoon, 1864. So these are all fairings, and all of them are after paintings or cartoons, and nobody knew that until a couple of years ago. So this one, for example, Now My Girl, is from this stereo, which is from this painting. James Aylar, Miss Lily's Carriage Stops the Way. This one, Return from the Ball, from another painting, another stereo first, and another painting. James Aylar again, Miss Lily's Return from the Ball. And this is Britain, so we had to finish with God Save the Queen. So this is God Save the Queen, the fairing, which is from a stereo, which is from a painting by Mary Henrietta Ward. And I will stop there because I won't even start telling you about pot lids and paintings and stereos. Thank you.
Should we just have 2 minutes for any questions there might be? I was thinking about the relationship, which actually came up in both presentations, between art history and entertainment.
Yes, of course.
Or the way that these technologies might generate anxiety in art history about the way that images are either decontextualized or used for the selfie perhaps, or for anything which commercializes their interest, while at the same time clearly both these tools illuminate where art history is or artworks are and how they are made entertaining. So that seemed to me quite an interesting tension between them.
Well, there's no reason why art shouldn't be entertaining at some point. Sometimes, I mean, it is in a way. I mean, it makes us think, but it's also a way of escaping, of discovering new things. And for the Victorians, we must remember, for the Victorians, of course, they didn't have the technologies we have now. They didn't have the internet. So looking at a painting through a stereo was actually a way for them of learning about art, even if it was sometimes, the fun side of it, but still it was a way of discovering art. So
the potential anxiety, I think, tells us about art history.
It does, yeah.
Quite a lot. We're very brief.
Quick question. These are all copyrighted at the time. Library of Congress has a huge collection. British Library has a huge collection. Do you have access to these collections, or are you collecting privately?
Now, this is from Dr. May's private collection.
Okay.
He has 100,000 cards. So.
Yeah.
But they are not copyrighted. I mean, the copyright has been...
No, they were.
Yeah, they were. Yeah.
They were copyrighted in order and it would be copyrighted, the copy was put in record. That's all I meant.
Well, actually, a lot of cards says copyrighted, and they were not because it was too expensive. But so the photographers actually put copyrighted on the photo, but they didn't bother to copyright it because it was much too expensive, and it was. And most of the cards, the British cards, for example, were just pirated in the States. I mean, they just copied the photo and published them under a different name. So it was very difficult at the time. Some were copyrighted, but very few actually. I checked.
No, it's a question of accessibility of collection.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, can we all? Oh, well, one.
I was just wondering. It seems a really appropriate way of looking at old displays and things like that are no longer available. But what about, is anyone documenting contemporary works? Because it's still a different way of looking at it.
It is, yeah. I mean, honestly, what I was saying about sculptures, I still don't understand why sculptures and sculpture, architecture, fashion. Why are we still looking at 2D photos of a fashion dress or a statue or a building? I mean, it doesn't make sense. I mean, the technology has been existing since 1832, well, 39 with photographs. So, and I really don't understand. I mean, you can go around the statue or the building and you can actually see it and see its proportions and see it in relation with the other objects of the room. I mean, this is the way to do it. And the Victorians understood that, but we no longer do, strangely enough.
I'm actually an artist and I've made work for Viewmasters.
Yeah.
Which is like similar technology.
Yes, it is. It is the same technology. Yes, two pictures, left eye, right eye, and the brain fuses them. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It's tricky too.
Well, people know Viewmaster usually, 1950, but I mean, stereo. I mean, there were millions of stereos produced in the Victorian era. I mean, Dr. May and I have seen millions of them, and every week we find new ones which we have never seen, and it's impossible to evaluate the actual production, and there are photos of everything. Yes, sir. Yeah.
I remember when we met before, we've all been using these glasses. Am I right in saying that it's possible to train your eyes to look at the stereoscopic?
Yes, well, not on the screen because it's a bit too big, but yes, when you look at a stereo, which is about it's about 7 inches wide, you can train your eyes, yes, to free. It's called free viewing. I do it all the time because when you work with a large collection, it's always a bit of a problem to take the stereoscope. So yes, or when you go through photos in a market.
Yeah. How long does it take?
It took me an hour on a train, just to learn the technique. Yeah. I had nothing else to do, so I just took a card and tried to. So the idea is to look through the card and find a point, for example, the spire in a church, and try and concentrate until the two images fuse. But you have to look through the image, not at the image, which is the difficult part.
I can see a couple more hands, but I do want to make sure everyone gets a proper break. So we're going to stop there. Perhaps Denis could take
of course, yeah. Can take questions
in private. But can we all just thank Denis so much?